Greetings from Alaska. Fred Roll, Kerr Young Tribal Council member from Dillingham. What I want to share with you today is something that happened with Craig and his buddy John. They were in the Alphabets. They were there to do some hunting, which is south of the Denali Highway, probably 5-6 miles as a crow flies from Swede Lakes, where a couple of occurrences I've shared with you guys. They were out there to caribou hunt, and where they were going, there's a bunch of buttes and plateaus and stuff, and then you got the tundra, and it just goes down to the tree line down in some places, and it's a very unique place. Real beautiful too. It's kind of, depending on, especially in the fall, it can get pretty windy. It's Alaska. So anyway, just giving a kind of an overview of the terrain. So where they're at is actually south a couple miles of the North Fork of the Golconda River. This particular place, as I'm learning from people sharing with me their emails, it's actually not a new thing for these experiences, and I was unaware of this myself. I didn't know there was activity out that way. So anyway, they're out caribou hunting, and they decide they're going to go up on this plateau and get a better look down in this area by these alders to get the drop on the caribou, because there's certain places they just bed down, especially in the wind and stuff. They'll bed down before they get up and then go feed and move along. So they're up on this plateau, making their way down, trying to get to a vantage point to see, where some caribou are. And as they're going along, lo and behold, immediately to their left, less than 20 yards away, there's 5 caribou, and they all jump up at the same time. So Craig and John turn, they both see the biggest bull at the same time, and they both shoot it. And it runs right into some thick alders, just, and they thought for sure, crap. Well, at least it has antlers, and it'll get caught up, and it won't make it too far into the brush. Hey, fair enough. That's a great assumption. The other ones run off. They couldn't get another bead on another one of the bulls that was running off, because there was another one with a set of nice shovels that they wanted to harvest as well. So they go down to find the caribou. They both happen to shoot, and as they're getting there, they're not seeing any signs of it. They heard it hit the brush, and as they're looking around, they notice deeper in these alders. Now, from a distance, the alders look like little bushes on the side of the hills and stuff, and on the side of the mountain. They're not. You get up on them, and they're 12, 20 foot tall, all grown together. It's just a real thick mess. You don't want to be trying to climb through there. So they're confused, like, why is this caribou just not somewhere a few feet in here, caught up on its antlers, taking its last breath? Well, as they're discussing, like, what the hell, a little deeper in, they're hearing snapping of alders and stuff, and they're like, oh, death throes. It's in its death throes, so we should be good. So they start trying to, dig on through there, and they both kind of get a couple feet in there and stop, because they get this sense like something's off, and they look at each other like, we're struggling to climb through here, and we don't have antlers holding us up. How is this caribou still making distance away from us? Because they were stopping, listening, having this brief discussion on what the hell. How is this thing still moving? Shot with 2 high-powered rifles. A little caribou. They're not very big animals. They're just not. And so, they're trying to figure out how in the hell this super caribou is making its way through these alders. And they hear the crashing and thrashing. So they back out, and they get back up on that plateau, because they're about eye level with the tops of these things, and they're watching all these alders shake and stuff. And they're like, man, that thing is tough. It takes 2 rounds, and now it's fighting through the alders. That's commendable. This thing wants to live. So they circle around, and where they want to anticipate it coming out. And the whole time, they're still looking at each other every once in a while like, this is crazy. How is this thing still, we must not have had good hits. Maybe we thought we hit good, and we were in a rush, and maybe we only clipped it. Maybe it's only wounded, so let's make sure we get it. We don't want just some wounded animal to lay in misery, that type of thing. You don't want to waste any meat. So as they're having this discussion, getting around these alders, there's still the alders shaking and moving, and they're watching it, as they're moving around. Now when they start coming down, the alders get taller, common sense, Well, as they're getting more further down into this little dip, it's actually not a little dip. It's a pretty substantial dip, but it's not a valley. It's just a dip. You'd have to been to the area to understand what I'm talking about. Anyone who has, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And so they get to a position where they think they can, get something on it. And as they're discussing it, they get this feeling like something ain't right. Just something's off with this. There's no way this caribou could be going through these alders, but yet we hear it smashing around after it's been shot twice. A little caribou, what, a couple 100 pounds maybe? That's a trooper for sure. So as they're discussing this, they're just boggled, and they're half considering, well, if it's this strong, maybe we didn't hit it at all, and it's just fighting its way out of here, and maybe we should just honor its tenacity and just leave it alone. And they're discussing it, and then they decided, no, if it's wounded, we want to put it down. We don't want this thing to suffer. So John, he goes, well, I'm gonna go back up a little ways, cut into the alders, and try to flush it out. And Craig was like, dude, we couldn't get 2 feet in on the other side. How are you going to accomplish that? He goes, I'll step on him, I'll walk, I'll leave my rifle here, and I'll go in there and try to be as fast as I can and make a move on this thing and spook it towards you, get it out in the open. He said, just don't shoot me. Fair enough. So he does this thing. He's trying to crawl through there and shake everything and try to get this thing to move. And as he gets about 5-6 feet in, they heard the loudest growl they had ever heard. Very loud, very distinct. Sounded just like a bear, but just outrageously loud. Ungodly loud and unnaturally loud for a bear. Immediately, John was motivated. He's out of those fucking shrubs. He's out of there. Pale. Super pale, trembling. Couldn't hold his rifle right when he picked it back up. He was trying to get his pack back on, and he's like, what the hell? So they're both looking at each other doing this, right? And I only giggle because, they made it safe. But just picturing it in my mind, the total what the F moment, just looking at your buddy that you've hunted with for years and this strange crap's happening, So they start making their way out. They go further down in the dip because they need to go up that other side to get to their four-wheelers. They want nothing else to do with the caribou. Whatever, whoever that is, they get the caribou. Done. They get to a position that's just a little more elevated to where they can try to look down on these alders from the other side of this big dip. And as they turn around to look, they notice a big face, looking at them from those alders. But it's not looking from the side or anything like that. It's looking right from the edge of the front at the top. And he guesstimated when they went by that place that the top was almost 12 foot tall. So this thing was tall enough to be almost a whole head above 12 foot. That's massive. He said it was looking right at them both, and started doing a huffing and was popping its teeth. He said they were big block teeth, but the clack sounded like rocks clacking together, right? That's new information to me. Clack, clack, clack. And just, it was, they took it as a threat. They're like, this thing's chomping his teeth. What the fuck is that? Let's get out of here. And so they continue. Meanwhile, they're both scared shitless. Let's get it straight. They are not coherently, there's no strategy to them getting to their four-wheelers. They're just getting the F out of there. And it doesn't matter. They're climbing, jumping, all that. It's a mad scramble. Now they get a certain distance away and they start hearing thrashing and breaking, and it sounds like it's coming directly behind them, right? And they're freaking out because they don't even want to shoot at this thing. Yeah, they're immediately, just something within them is telling them, no, this ain't supposed to be. We gotta go. And he said it looked like a circus, and they were dropping, falling, all the stumbling around. And they get to a position where there's a little bit of a cubby in the brush that they were stumbling over, and they both stop. And they get back to back, and they're holding their rifles because this noise, it's just out of sight. They know what they saw, but they didn't see all of it. They just saw this face. So the noise is coming up just out of view in some more of the alders that are up next to them. And they realize they're not that far away from this other batch of alders, And pretty soon, any moment, this thing could be right on top of them. So Craig, being very wigged out, freaked out, he put 3 shots in the air to make an emergency signal. Boom, boom, boom. Puts off 3 rounds. Noise doesn't stop. It actually increases. Things start, they can see alder branches or alder trees just snapping down just out of view. They see the top, and then all of a sudden the top's gone along with the crack sound. So this thing is in there and it's starting to break shit. Even with the shots going off. All it did was antagonize it, I guess. So they immediately turn around and they start trying to make their way back up to where their 4-wheelers are parked. Now, they got a good distance to go. It's not like it's just, up a little rise and they're there. No, they've hiked quite a ways. And so they're making their way towards the general direction their 4-wheelers are parked, and periodically they would stop because the noise didn't follow them, but it stayed right there. Noise is happening. He reloads his gun. John has his, and they're at a little higher point now, and they're looking down trying to see, and they notice towards the center, offset of center, all these alders are broken, so it's kind of has an opening where they can kind of see in, and they see this orangish brown figure they couldn't make out. It was this brown moving real fast, and just like it was just tearing everything up, and every once in a while they would see a big hand raise up. Now, he said when he first saw that big hand raise up, he felt like he was having heart palpitations because it clicked. The face, the size, and then a 5-fingered hand, massive hand. And just all of a sudden they see it, flailing around whatever it was doing in the brush. They want nothing to do with that shit. Nothing. They both look at each other like, what the hell are we going to do now? So immediately they turn around and they continue their mission to the freaking 4-wheelers. They want to go. Have that caribou. Don't give a flying rat's patootie about that caribou. Now, once they get up a little higher, the thrashing and the noise had calmed down a little bit. And when they looked back to get a vantage point, it was standing in the middle of this area it had destroyed, and it had their caribou. And it had their caribou like a rag doll by the neck. And they were looking at it, and the thing just takes the caribou looking right at them and flings it off to the side like, oh, you guys are still here? You want some? That kind of posture. Like, oh, you're here still. Let me drop what I got in my hand. Let's go. That's the vibe he got. So immediately they turned around again and started back towards their 4-wheelers. And he said he had never been so relieved as when he saw just a little bit of his handle sticking up because it was obscured by some scrub brush, some berry bushes or whatever, what have you. And he said he had never felt so much relief. And just as they were getting to the 4-wheelers, John had twisted his ankle pretty bad during the flight. So as they progressed and some time had passed, John's ankle was swelling bad, like real bad. So they decided once they got to the 4-wheelers, because this thing hasn't left. It's still, it's a little obscured, but they could still see it down there moving around. It hadn't run off. It didn't go anywhere. It's right. It's just down there. He said at that point it was probably 50 to 60 yards away, which in the big scheme of things isn't really that far. Now, the reason it appeared to be 50, 60 yards is because they had been going up an incline. And so they weren't making, progress this way. They were making progress that way, which is different in the wilderness, So he tells John, hey, you can't operate your 4-wheeler properly. What you'll do is sit on the back of mine facing backwards, because the trail they have to get back to their camp, from where they're parked, drops downhill, cuts to the back side of those alders where this thing is, and then hooks back to the main trail for them to get back down towards where they were camped by the Golconda River. Now, once they started down and were going around, this thing started making this god-awful guttural scream. And he said it sounded like someone was stabbing a woman to death or something, because it was this almost rhythmic, like a siren. It would just loud go fade out, loud, fade out, loud, fade out, along with this weird clicking sound at the same time. And he said the most eerie thing about that is that there was nothing to attribute. They had no reference for the sound, so it was really hard to pinpoint exactly what that noise was for him. Which, hey, I wasn't worried about it. So, and once they got to the point of the trail where they were closest to the alders, John was just so freaked out. He was just shooting rounds in the air as best he could as they were wheeling past. And of course that freaked Craig out, because he now thinks that this thing is coming at him and John's firing to defend them. So he starts wheeling really hard to get the hell out of Dodge, because he didn't want to get caught by this thing. And meanwhile, John's bouncing around. Stop, slow down. He goes, did you get it? And John's like, no, I was just firing warning shots. And so he calms down a little bit, and they make it out of the area. This is not an uncommon thing. I mean, it doesn't happen every day. That'd be ridiculous. But these things do happen, and they happen in different places at different times, but they're happening. Just keep that in mind when you go in the woods. Just be safe. Don't drink and boat. It's not worth it. Not at all. Nothing wrong with having a good time, but just stay where you are if you're partying it up, having a good time. This has been Fred in Alaska. More to come. Y'all have a good day.